Okay, we are live here. Shalom Aleichem. Ariel Bar Tzadok here from the KosherTorah School, wishing everybody what we call in Hebrew a Chodesh Tov Umevorach. Tonight is the 4th of February in the year 2019. It is a Monday evening. It is the last day of the Hebrew month of Shvat, which makes it the first of the 2-day Rosh Chodesh new moon celebration. So that is our timestamp for today, tonight, whatever. So that's why I wish everybody a Chodesh Tov Mevorach. The tradition in the, of course, Torah circles is that, of course, Adar, which is this Hebrew month, is the time of the celebration of the celebration holiday of Purim. But we're not at Purim yet. There's this month, very interesting. I should say this year. But those, of course, are familiar in the traditional Western calendar. Every 4th year is what's called a leap year, in which we add an extra day to the month of February, created February 29th, so as to balance out the cycle of the solar year, which, of course, is 365 and 1/4 day. Now, if you remember, according to the Torah tradition, our calendar is lunar, and the 12 lunar months do not add up to 365 days. If anything, they add up to 360. So every year you will lose 5 days. You go count that up. Every year you're losing 5 days. Every 6 years you're losing an entire month. You keep that up, you're going to be celebrating Passover in the middle of the fall and Sukkot and Rosh Hashanah in the middle of the winter. In other words, flip the calendar around. Now, for those of you who have a little bit of knowledge of comparative religion, that's exactly how the Islamic calendar, also lunar, works. And that is why their celebration of Ramadan always floats around the year. So in our tradition, our sages instituted an old tradition, which is actually Babylonian in origin, not even Jewish, in which they had a very intricate balance of the solar and lunar calendar, in which I think it's 7 times in a 19-year cycle, we add not a leap day, but a leap month, so as to balance out the cycle. Well, this year is one of those leap years, and we have, therefore, 2 months of Adar, and Adar Aleph, Adar 1, and Adar 2. Now, Adar 2 is obviously the one that is closest in time to the original cycle. So therefore, the celebrations of the month of Adar, meaning Purim, are all celebrated in Adar 2, Adar Bet, as we would call it. It's very interesting because when you want to now juxtapose the concept of astrology, you can't just mess around with the stars. The stars are fixed in their place pretty much. So do we really have 2 whole months that is Pisces? Well, it's not exactly like that. In that respect, you're going to have to look beyond just the limitation of a lunar application to a cosmological and or astrological sign. And anybody who's, knows that kind of stuff does that. But in all due respect, we're not astrologers. I know many people will use astrology and try to predict from it. And again, it's very important that we recognize what the Torah teaches about that. Any type of predictive science, or art for that matter, is strictly prohibited by biblical law. Why? If you can look into the stars and you can tell this or that, why not reveal it? And the answer is very simple. Because that contradicts that which God gave us as human beings. Bechirat Hopshit, free will. There's a very interesting midrash which is taught about Moses, Moshe Rabbeinu. Not with astrology, but something similar about, if you will, fate, if you will, or destiny, which is what we don't hold. The story goes like this, that in the days of Moses, one of the kings of Africa was a master of facial readings. He could read all the lines of the face and tell a person's personality. It's called Chochmat HaPartzuf. It is taught to this very day in the Zohar, and you have books about that available in Hebrew. I think something like that's even coming out in English. I don't know what's available in French. For those of you who know, I've been spending a lot of time, because of our new rabbinite in France, getting to know our students there. And I'm stunned by how many great things in Kabbalah they have in French. But getting back to this story. Moses, of course, is out in the wilderness, according to the story. Remember, this is a legend. It's not history, it's just a story, okay? And this great king from Africa sends, I am a master of reading all the facial features. I want to know who this man Moses is. So he sends his greatest artist into the Sinai desert and says, draw me the most perfect picture of Moses, bring it back to me so I can ascertain the nature of his true personality. And indeed, the artist does that. And the king receives the drawing, looks at it, and says, this is the man who is God's chosen. This is the man who received the Torah at Mount Sinai. This is the leader of Israel. And the guy says, absolutely positive. He says, it can't be. This is the face of a wicked, evil man. And so perplexed, the king himself returns to Sinai with the artist. And the artist validates it. Indeed, this is the face of Moses. And the artist then turns to Moses and says, I don't understand. I'm a master of understanding all the signs and features of the face. And according to your signs and features, you're supposed to be a wicked, evil man. How is it that you can be so righteous and holy? Moses looks and smiles and says, choice. I chose not to be like that. And the man, the king, of course, was humbled. Now, again, it's not a historical story. It's a story to teach us a point. Why, for example, when somebody wants to make a claim that something is in the stars, I could care less. Why? Because I care what's in Torah. There's an old teaching in the Zohar which echoes very true. It's actually very ancient, and it's the foundation of a teaching that's taught in the Christian tradition as well. In the Zohar, it's taught in Parshat Ekev, Daf Ayin Gimel Amud Aleph, if I'm not mistaken. Kudsha berechu oraita Yisrael kulan hadeh, which means God, Torah, and Israel, all one. In other words, God, his word, and his people, they all emanate from the same source. So essentially, anyone who has a connection, contact with God, obviously can connect through his word, and through that, transform one's personality comprehensively. So, in all due respect to all the fortune tellers out there, astrologers or tarot card readers or anybody else who wants to predict things, you know something? It doesn't matter. Because by the nature of human choice, bechirat hofshit, this is what we call in Hebrew teshuvah, return. Literally, you have the ability to turn your direction. So even if you have karma, you know what karma is? It's the Eastern word, I think it's from the Hindu tradition, which pretty much states what goes around comes around. You're going to get yours. Well, you don't always have to get yours. You can literally, by a change of your thoughts, feelings, deeds, of course, literally and realistically, go to sleep one night and wake up in a slightly altered parallel universe, shifted, if you will, and you'd never know it. That's the way we hold, where in which the energetic power of the past no longer has an influence on the present or the future. That is our power. That is our ability. So yeah, we got what it takes to do great things. This is what we say in the Torah, koach la'asot hayil. We can do many, many things. All right, so some scientists say that we don't have free will. How does that jive with Judaism? Well, you want to know something? Scientists say a lot of things. That doesn't make them true. Just because a scientist wants to say, I have the facts. Oh, do you? Well, before you want to believe that a scientist can say that we have no free will, ask the scientist to first define and identify what is the I that does not have free will. What is the nature of consciousness, the mind? All right? Dissect the brain. Show me the mind. Dissect the brain. Show me the soul. Show me consciousness. Yeah, no. Science doesn't have all the answers, and they're the first ones that know it. All righty. With that note, a couple of issues that I do want to address here, and then we can go into your questions and answers if you would like. The other day, I had a conversation with one of my oldest students who, I floated an idea to our registered students here of our school, our KosherTorah school, about possibly teaching a regular weekly class in Halakha, Jewish law. I love teaching Halakha. I think that the study of Halakha is one of the highest levels of spiritual refinement, simply because it sharpens the mind. And by sharpening the mind, you expand awareness. You expand consciousness. You have a deeper ability of penetration into understanding of things. And that's what tikkun, remember, rectification, is all about. So, as much as I wanted to teach a public class in the laws of kosher, Shabbat, Nida, family purity laws, and the like, it became very, very frustrating. Because I'll share with you this. It's a very good example. In Paris, in all of France, of course, they have a chief rabbinate. It's called, if I'm not mistaken, the consistoire. And the consistoire pretty much takes care of the traditional Torah life in all of France. And from what I see, they do a great job at it. Well, one of the things that they do, of course, is the monitoring of kosher laws. So in order to make things easy for the members of their community, they have a list of kosher foods. And everybody in France who wants to observe the Torah way is going to get, in quote, the list from the consistoire. And if it's on the list, you buy it. If it's not on the list, you don't. That's pretty black and white. Makes simple sense, right? Well, you can't see how I'm like, twiddling my thumbs here, if you will, or whatever. Why? Well, as I was sharing with people there, they asked about the list here in the United States. And I said, well, we don't exactly have a list here. We have pretty much maybe 100 or more lists. We have private kosher certification agencies here in the United States, Hechsherim. And each one has a list. So which list would we refer to here in the United States? OU, OK, Kaf K, Star K. We could go down the list of all the different agencies and all their different lists. And then we haven't even asked the question whether or not we even need a list. So you see, what we have here is shinui minhagim, or if you will, different traditions and customs based upon the culture traditions where people live. And for me, or any other internet teacher, rabbi, to teach a course in Halakha and make a declarative statement, this is the way to do things, very possibly, most likely, is going to step on the feet, or if you will, push into the space of other rabbis in other communities who are what we call in actually Aramaic, the Mara Da'atra, the man of the manor, the lord of the manor, that's their community. And in all due respect, no one has the right to go into and someone else's community and disturb the stability of how that community operates. So can you imagine, it's not personal about me, but anybody, any, in quote, internet rabbi who wants to say, this is the laws of Shabbat, this is permitted, this is forbidden, the laws of kashrut, the same, or whatever. And that individual then goes back into their own community. Let it be New York, let let it be London, let it be Paris, let it be Eretz Israel, let it be anywhere, everywhere, and say to their rabbi, you know, Rabbi, you teach like this, but I heard from this rabbi online who said like that, and I'm going to listen to him. Well, that local rabbi is going to be pretty ticked off that someone in his own community is, rocking the boat, or in other words, creating instability in which a community stands on its cohesion. Remember the good old saying, united we stand, divided we fall? So, I'll give you some wise words of the good old Gemara. I'm sure you've heard them before. When in Rome, you do as the Romans do. When in Paris, you do what the Parisians do. When in the United States, you do as the Americans do. That's pretty much the rule. And based upon that, I chose not to teach a public class in Halakha, simply because I would not want it to be abused by anyone who wouldn't understand or respect the boundaries and the parameters of the rabbis of the individual communities. Now, excuse me, for those of you who do have halachic questions about something, well, you can email me, arielsadok@gmail.com. It's really that simple. And no, I'm not going to always give a psak halakha, meaning define for somebody a halakha. But if it's of something of such pressing need, I do this only for the students of our school, I should add, not for the public. If it's a matter of pressing need, I will, consult with the individuals and see if I can offer any assistance within the context of being a rabbi. And if so, I will not tell them what the law is, because there's no such thing, but I will tell them what the options are within the context of the applications that are before us. In other words, ha-nadun didei, what is and isn't at the time. So somebody wants to talk about depth psychology of Jung. Carl Jung? Well, you really want to learn Jung, you need a lot of good background, and you got to have patience to weed through things. But anyway, I'll mention that. Let's talk more about halakha. So I was sharing with my friend. What we observe today, and this is important for those of you who are not Jewish, all right? You have to understand this. Since the destruction of the first temple in Jerusalem, even during the days of the second temple, what we Jews today observe, especially since the destruction of the second temple, is what we call rabbinic Judaism. We follow the Torah interpretations of the sages of Israel. That is what we do. Are there other interpretations? But of course. Are there other groups? But of course. To this very day, we have Samaritans. To this very day, you have Karaites. You have all these other different groups, but they are not our group. They are not our way. So you're going to say, what is the authentic and official and the one true way? No, you want to know something? We don't have concepts like that. We believe in doing things in the traditions that we received and have observed. And others, they're going to do whatever they're going to do. Where does God judge them? We don't speak for God. God doesn't make us his policemen to decide things. We say, this is our proper way. This is the way we understand things. This is the way we observe. For those who choose not to embrace that, then they are not members of our community. That doesn't make them bad and evil. We don't wipe them out, God forbid. Certainly don't treat anybody with prejudice, disrespect, or disavowal. They're just not members of our community. So for those of us who do follow the Torah path, and we can look in the Jewish world today and see those of the other movements like the Reform and Conservative, who do not embrace the rabbinic traditions and live according to Halakha. That's their business. But we do not embrace them as members of our community, unless, of course, they choose to join that community. Where do they stand with God? I don't know. I assume if they're good, decent human beings, then they stand fine. It's not for me to say. Where do they stand with regards to Torah and Halakha? The rabbis have opinions upon that, and those opinions have been written down for centuries. All right, that's just the way it is. So now we have the codification of the original Halakha by Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, the prince, way back when in 170 of the Common Era. Now, if you look at the Mishnah of Rabbi Yehuda, Mishnah means the compilation of the laws, pretty much. There are always different opinions brought down. Because when you're bringing down the words of man, it's not the word of God. No rabbi ever begins his opinion by saying, "Thus saith the Lord." It would be a loony if he did. Right? No. We believe that this is our interpretation of things. As such, we have different interpretations, different opinions. So, for example, in the days of Rabbi Yehuda, again, the prince, circa 170 of the Common Era, there was a question. You know something? Chicken, like meat, needs to be slaughtered. You know, shechita, the blood needs to be removed. So it's very similar to meat, but it's not meat. It's parv, meaning it's non-meat. As such, according to the original law, you could eat it with dairy regularly. But the rabbis understood that, you know, something being that it does need to be slaughtered, chickens need to be slaughtered just like animals. They are an animal. And their meat needs to be cleansed of blood, just like all other animals. Well, that's kind of like meat. So let's not confuse people to think that this meat I can eat with dairy, but the other meat, no. Let's just say chicken is meat and call it a day. And that was the accepted opinion. Except there was one great rabbi, Rabbi Yossi of the Galilee, who said, you know something? No, not my community. So to the day he died, and Rabbi Yossi's community, they ate chicken as parv or with dairy or whatever. And his opinion is brought down in the Mishnah. We do not hold by it today, but it is mentioned. This gives us a sense of, if you will, flexibility in understanding the law by having fluidity of opinions. Following the Mishnah, you had the discussions for centuries, which were eventually brought together into what's called the Gemara, the teaching, and together it'd be called the Talmud. That an original one that was established in the land of Israel, and that became authoritative. But a century or so later, they compiled a bigger and better one in Babylon, and that became the Babylonian Talmud. And they included in it Agatha, the teachings of morals and values and stories and the like, and created an encyclopedic network of the ebb and flow of consciousness, wherein which those who learn it properly and completely will absorb all the Kabbalistic materials and lessons right there. So I'm often asked, what's the greatest Kabbalistic text of them all? In my opinion, it's the Talmud, not the Zohar. Moving right along, once the Talmud was, if you will, ordered or put together, commentaries were written. And one commentary said, okay, one quick thing about the Gemara. The Gemara, the Talmud, in other words, is not a Shulchan Aruch. It is not a code of laws. In most cases, the Gemara does not tell you exactly what the law is. It just describes all the different opinions and views. Sometimes it will tell you the ones that are accepted, and sometimes it doesn't. So the Gemara itself says in Tractate Nidah, Ein lomdim Halakha mepi Gemara. You don't learn Halakha from the Gemara. The Gemara helps you understand the ebb and flow of the consciousness and the mindset of the rabbis. It enables you to take your hand and put it on the pulse of Halakha, so you get the flow, the flavor, the taste. And based upon that, you can then look at every situation in life, and based upon those Talmudic principles, draw conclusions about the right way to practice for the place and the time. And that is how what we call a psak or a halakha is decided. This is why you can't do like internet or one size fits all halakha. It just doesn't work. You have different groups, or as we say in English, different strokes for different folks. And that is why Talmudic Judaism is a plurality unto itself. And you have all different kinds of observances and practices. And as long as they are within the greater context of the tradition, they're all fine. All the different schools of opinions, all the different practices of law, these are the things that, again, we embrace. Doesn't matter. You know, you've heard all these words like Ashkenazi and Sephardi and Kabbalist, non-Kabbalist, Maimonidean rationalist, all these different, in quote, schools of thought. And each one will tell you, yeah, the Halakha is supposed to be practiced like this. And one school is going to contradict the other, especially those of the Kabbalistic school and those of the non-Kabbalistic schools. They can literally be an outright clash with one another. Which do we observe? I guess it all depends on which school you associate with. That's halakha. So, yeah, it's very confusing, I have to admit. There is no one book that you can go and buy in English, or for that matter, even in Hebrew, which is going to tell you the law. It doesn't work like that. There are many books, and you just don't understand that. And when you have a specific need to know a specific practice, that's when you contact your rabbi. And your rabbi will give you personal instruction and direction. That's what I provide for our students here at our KosherTorah school. And indeed, what local rabbis, each in their own communities, will provide for their members. And that's why, again, you always respect boundaries and parameters, and everybody's got to do what everybody's got to do. Now, moving right along, another issue we got to discuss, and that is the matter of proper boundaries. Well, there is one problem, if you will, that arises with the good old internet generation. Forgive me, got to take a little sip here. I already said shehakol before we began our class, and you'll forgive my terrible American habits of drinking out of the bottle. So lo apropos in France and the like. But okay. Yes, I'm learning to be French. That's what happens. You take a French rabbinite, right? As much as we absorb America into her, she absorbs French into us. C'est bon, as they say. But anyway, moving right along. Understand something about parameters, especially here in the internet world. We now live in a world in which everybody's in touch with everybody else. Right here in class, we have people from all walks of life, from every different background. And because we are live here through the internet, people, it breaks down boundaries and parameters that don't need, or I should say, do need to be observed. Again, I don't know if you guys can hear in the background, you got the old dogs barking up a storm, but yeah, that's what our dogs do. So anyway, getting back to the issue here. With regards to parameters today, people think that the internet world makes access or accessibility easier, especially between the sexes. And that tends to become problematic because, in all due respect, I'm a big encourager of men and women both studying Torah and, of course, the secrets of the Torah and practicing the Kabbalistic meditations and traditions. Whereas at the same time that I encourage these teachings through literature and classes, some people tend to, if you will, blur the lines of modesty, tzniut as we call it, and seek familiarity between the sexes, which really is not kosher. And they'll say, well, we're online, it's not the same. Well, yeah, it is the same. No one's going to be committing adultery if you're married through the internet. That's true. But there's something else that's developed. And even radio talk show host Dr. Laura Schlesinger speaks about this, as I do myself. Something called emotional adultery, in which a married spouse for whatever reason, chooses no longer to confide in their spouse, they might feel alienated from him or her. And many a time with women who might not be happy in their marriages will find familiarity with a spiritual leader who, in our case, in our Jewish traditions, may be a rabbi. Happens also in the Christian traditions. I don't know about the Islamic community. And because of the nature of familiarity, it breeds a level of, shall we say, uncomfortable closeness, which can materialize in that which we call, again, Dr. Schlesinger and myself, amongst others, will call it emotional adultery, where in which an emotional attachment is made with a member of the opposite sex, not one's spouse. That's a problem. That really breaks up marriages as much as any kind of physical adultery. And, you know, people get a little too familiar, and it's not healthy. It's not kosher. And someone, you know, might just say, well, we're not doing anything wrong. And, you know, I've heard these excuses. I don't mention any names, as she knows my policy here. But there is a colleague of mine who was Baal Teshuvah, but who made the terrible, terrible mistake many, many years ago of thinking that you could teach married women. And unfortunately, in that circumstance, it led to things that were not kosher. And you got to learn lessons from these things. This is why our sages teach us these lessons. This is why these parameters are up there and out there. And myself now, as a happily married man, a new rabbanit here, we here at even our KosherTorah school are observing these proper parameters. And I believe it's very important. Our new rabbanit is a very wise, very powerful, strong woman. She still feels a little uncomfortable yet with her English. Here, I yell at her. Her English is perfect, but she doesn't listen to me. Typical. But anyway, long story short, all of her female friends in France are pleading with her to teach. I'm pleading with her to teach. All right, here we go. Now I have to confess something here. She is a Hasidah of Hasidei Braslav. She loves the teachings of Rabbi Nachman of Braslav. And as a Sephardi, well, I think Rabbi Nachman is now Sephardi because most of the people who go to Uman are all Sephardi now. And she just loves the teachings of Rabbi Nachman. And she encourages me. She wants me to teach them. So I've actually started to study the Likutei Moharan and other teachings of Rabbi Nachman. And I'm preparing to teach them myself shortly. And gosh, as I'm reading them and I'm reading the commentaries that are available, I scratch my head and wonder and say, my goodness, understanding as I do the original Kabbalistic content underlying these teachings, people writing these content, they don't get it. They really don't understand the depths of Rabbi Nachman's teachings. So every now and then you're going to see I'm going to be teaching from him, Mana the Rabbanit, and I'm going to continue to encourage her to do classes for women. And one of these days, hopefully soon, she's going to come on camera, maybe with me, maybe by herself, and we'll have classes for women. And God be willing, maybe even in French, if she's willing to teach in French. Halacha. But anyway, proper parameters, boundaries. These things are important, especially for those of us who are sensitive to and aware of Kabbalistic realities. That, like the Matrix, everything is energy, right? Energies have to be properly balanced. Energies have to be properly aligned. So these things are important that they be observed. And in this respect, even in our own school here, we've seen people who, you know, get very, very, shall I say, a little too close in that respect. And, you know, we got to create and observe and respect proper boundaries, especially in marriages and individuals, so as to avoid uncomfortable unpleasantnesses, but to create what we call shalom bayit, so that people can have the proper bonds with their own individual spouses in accordance to our Torah traditions. And this doesn't matter if anybody's Jewish or not Jewish. What does that have to do with anything? It's a matter of proper balance and dignity and respect. So in that context, of course, as a rabbi and a teacher, I am at the disposal of our student body for those who will approach me with those issues that are appropriate within that context. And any thing that deals or comes from any of our female women students will be addressed by our Rabbanit, which is the proper balance of things. It's the way Rav Sharabi did it, Baba Sali did, and all the great Rabbanim. And we here at Kosher Torah are going to do the same. And I hope to establish this not only for ourselves, but as a precedent for others to follow as well. Okay? That's just the way it really needs to be because of energetic balances. Now, with these things being said, and these now new ideas, one of the things that I've been working on that I've committed this year to, and I've made this clear to my Kosher Torah students, and again, just want to make it available to the public, I've been compiling my written materials. I've always taught audio classes for our student body, and obviously we'll be continuing to do that. But the complaint that I got is, Rabbi, you have nothing available. What do we do on the Sabbath? So I've written for 25, 30 years now, and I go over my files and I go, oh my goodness, I pull out things from like 20, 25 years ago. I totally forgot that I wrote. And I said, yeah, this needs to be updated and re-released. I mean, my commentaries on the prophecies of Eliyahu and Avi, the teachings on exile, all these different things. My old Kabbalistic stories, Rabbi Nachman wrote his, I wrote mine. Not to compare, but it is what it is. I am right now working, editing again one of the books that I wrote a while back in my Opano Derech journals on the Kabbalah of male and female personalities in light of the Esses Sfirot. So all of my books that I'm editing, I'm going to be releasing in PDF ebook format. It's just the easiest and cheapest way. And watch our KosherTorah.com website because they're all going to become available. And I'm going to make them available to the public, not just our student body. Our student body, because of their support, I give them free copies. In all due respect, the least I could do for their, giving, free donations to our school. If it wasn't for that, we wouldn't be able to pay our bills and get along. And those, of course, who, we always encourage and invite people to join our student body to have access to these things, and hopefully, can encourage you guys to do it and join our live classes that I do teach. We are teaching classes in the Etz Chaim, the Otzrot Chaim, in Emek HaMelech. I'm going to be starting shortly in Shara Kavanot. Of course, continuing the Kabbalistic Weekly Torah portion, and of course, coming soon, the teachings of Rabbi Nachman of Breslov. My rabbi won't let me get away with not doing it, and that's fine. It's as if Rabbi Nachman speaking to her and telling me to get my show on the road, if you will. So be it. So for our Kosher Torah students, this is what's coming down the line. All righty. So with those things now, I'm going to turn to your questions. If you have any questions on any topic whatsoever, I'm going to read here in the text, put on my good old reading glasses. I can see. Yep, very good. And let's see what's going on. All righty. I have a question here. Is chicken kosher by tradition only? Because they do not eat dead animals. Well, chickens have always been known to be what we call a kosher bird. Now, with regards to birds, here's an interesting thing. What is a kosher bird? The Torah, the Bible itself, gives us simanim, or signs of what to look for, just like with the fish. It's going to have, scales and fins. Well, with birds, they also have to have signs. As such, a chicken is one of those animals that's accepted kosher. Now, you see I'm twiddling my fingers here again. So I got one for you. How about turkey? Turkey, if you remember, is indigenous to North America. Nobody in Bible times Nobody in temple times, nobody in rabbinic times, Talmudic in other words, ever saw a turkey. As such, we have no tradition whether or not the turkey is actually kosher. So therefore, when turkeys were originally discovered way back in the 1500s, 1600s, there were a number of rabbis who stated, hey, it's not one of those birds that the Torah says is acceptable. And a lot of people did not eat turkey because of that. I think today turkey is relatively universally accepted. But somehow in the back of my mind, I think I remember seeing somewhere that there still exists some opinion out there that some small minority fringe group still won't eat turkey because, in their opinion, it doesn't, come from the start. All righty. What else do we got here? Kind of like MMA, different training or teaching students for a particular reason. Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to observance of Halakha, it is like mixed martial arts. Am I in America? You betcha I am. So what can I say? Oh, you know what? Somebody sent me an email the other day. Good morning from South Korea. Oh, good morning to you, South Korea. Gosh, I know. Eat turkey because we eat peacock. You eat peacock. Okay. Good morning from London. All right. Hello to you guys as well. Yeah, Israelis eat a lot of turkey. I know. Okay. For those of you who could see on my good old finger here, I got it in the finger. There you go. See what that is? It's a wedding band. Now, I was asked, Rabbi, in our Orthodox tradition, we don't wear wedding bands, and isn't that a questionable thing? And I said, this needs to be addressed. As we were talking earlier about proper boundaries and stuff like that, and today people all mess around with boundaries. Don't think that's because someone is religious, Christian, Jewish, or anything else, that is a boundary or protection from people doing things that they shouldn't be doing. Problems happen. And in my opinion, even though under the chuppah at the time of a Torah observant, halachic wedding, there's no double ring ceremony because the ring given is not a token of love. It's a token of obligation of finances. That's what it says, Hareat mikudeshet li, when you are betrothed to me. Means a man is not making a proclamation of love, but rather a proclamation of financial obligations towards the woman. He's committing his wallet. It has nothing to do with his heart. That's what a ketubah is all about. So that's why a double ring ceremony does not make sense in a Torah tradition, because the wife is not in turn making that financial obligation to the husband. Ancient traditions, and yeah, things are different today, but tradition. It's the way we do things. Man has the financial responsibility and obligation towards the woman, not the other way around. But yet, the woman today, following the customs of the world, wears a wedding band, wedding ring, to say she's a married woman. You know what that's supposed to mean, right? Guys, hands off. No messing with a married woman. And even in secular circles, in most cases, unfortunately not all, somebody sees somebody is married, they usually back off and they'll show at least hopefully respect. Well, you want to know something? In our circumstances today, in which promiscuity is so rampant, in my opinion, it's equally important that men make the statement, as do the women, that we are in committed relationships, and as a committed relationship in a marriage, we pledge fidelity, monogamy. And these things are universal concepts. This isn't just orthodoxy or religion talking, or Judaism or Christianity. It's all religions. Who disagrees with this, right? One of the universal laws is that you don't commit adultery. You don't mess around, not just physically, but emotionally, like we discussed earlier, and the like. And yeah, I think it's a really important statement Again, it's not a halachic issue. It's a social issue. It's a social custom. And yeah, I do believe married men should be wearing wedding bands to make a statement. Just like Orthodox Jews will physically dress differently. They'll put on a talit katan on the outside, or they'll wear the kippah or a big old hat. It's kind of like an external statement of protection saying, I am supposed to be religious and not, in quote, secular, which means I don't act in these certain ways. And my appearance or dress is supposed to at least serve in some function as a prohibition on myself or on others from acting in ways contrary to morality and Torah. Well, you want to know something? The psychology of that does work. And so the psychology of a wedding band works as well. And so, yeah, I will encourage all married individuals, men and women. I don't care what the nature of your relationship is. I don't care who you are or what you are. If you have a commitment to another human being, make that statement. Make that statement to the other human being so that other human being, your spouse, male or female, knows that you walk daily with a statement and a badge of pride and honor in one another. Now you can say, well, it's just an external symbol. Yeah, I know it's an external symbol. You know what? We live in a world in which symbols are important. That's just the way it is. And you can not like it or disagree with it, but it is what it is. So yeah, I do support the custom. And after our wedding ceremony, I agreed to take that upon myself. And my Rabbanit bestowed upon me that, and I that's what I do. I've never worn jewelry before in my life. I'm not a jewelry wearer. But you want to know something? It's a statement, and it's a wise statement. And I agree. You know, like we say in Pirkei Avot, who's wise, the one who learns from everyone. So I have a beautiful, young, fiery Rabbanit, and much younger than I am, you should know, but at least equal in wisdom. And in that respect, God be willing, as soon as I'm able to twist her arm to get in front of the camera here, you'll see that for yourselves. But all right, moving right along. Isn't the idea of marriage being romantic love a 19th century concept? Most love stories of old are tragedies. Well, yeah, the way some marriages go today, yeah, I don't know how that might be 21st century. Marriages were always usually political alliances and the like. And marrying for love, yeah, wow, what a great concept. Isn't it the way it's supposed to be? You know, I don't know how many of you have Netflix, but here in the United States, we can get the Israeli television program Shtisel, which is a story about a Mea Sharim Haredi family living in Israel. And I'm actually stunned by the accuracy of the portrayal of the characters, who I might add, it's not a romantic, program. In other words, they're not being portrayed as these greatest, holiest of the now people, not portrayed as, bad and evil either. They're just showing, real life on an everyday basis. And for those of you who have Netflix, because it is on Netflix, it's a very, very good insight and a very cool show to watch. It should make you think about a lot of things. One of the main themes going through the show is the young man character who is going on, traditional shidduchim, dates, and how he was, dating one girl, how it broke up because, he agreed to marry her for all the wrong reasons. And the woman that he did fall in love with was older than him, so she wasn't considered appropriate for him. So she moved on, and whatever. And I got 2 seasons of the show. It's a good show. Good show. It's in my opinion, worth your watching. And yeah, if you're really into Israeli TV, don't miss Fauda, F-A-U-D-A, about Israeli undercover operatives interacting with Arabs and the like. Definitely a good show if you've never watched Fauda. But alrighty, so yeah, marriages. Remember the marriages. Today, a marriage is a bond between 2 human beings, right? And the commitment between 2 human beings has to be the closest the two human beings can become. And that means honesty, respect, and integrity. You're not strangers. You have to be each other's best friend, trusted confidant, to actually honor and admire your partner. That's what building a life together is supposed to mean. My grandparents, God rest their souls, they were married for 70 years. Gosh, I wish I could have that kind of relationship. God bless me, I should live so long. My parents, God rest their souls, again, close to 40 years and the like. So you know something? You make things work. But you have to understand what it really means. So all those lessons I was talking about earlier, about, you know, not messing around with other partners and keeping proper boundaries, it has its place. It's those types of things made so ever easy by the internet today, which breaks and violates these boundaries and causes tremendous harms. Thou shalt not. How much more blunt can I be? All right, let's move on with more of your questions. We have a few minutes left. Yeah. Jonathan is asking, the Ishim angels are said to be very human-like. I was told that they are around more than we think. It's just we are so busy with our lives that we just don't recognize them. What do I think? Well, you really want to know, eh? Angels. There are all kinds of angels. Big question. Are angels corporeal entities or non-corporeal entities? I've discussed this in Aliens, Angels, and Demons, my book. We've discussed this in numerous classes. Rambam enumerates 10 different types of angels, only one of which are called Ishim. Remember good old Genesis 6, the sons of God coming down and taking the daughters of men? Well, if angels are non-corporeal, how is it that they have any semblance of attraction towards human women? And they're going to copulate with them and have kids? All right. Let's talk about corporeality versus non-corporeality. Non-corporeality meaning non-physical. Well, let's go online. Let's go into virtual reality. Let's go into our own little matrix. You can actually create the most hottest, sexiest male or female online as a composite character. Let's throw in super modern technology and add AI, artificial intelligence, to it. Okay? So now we have an artificially intelligent avatar online, male or female. You make your choice. And you fall in love with that individual. Whatever. Are you going to be able to consummate that marriage? Are you going to be able to copulate and have children? No. You can't physically do it. Now, you can go through virtual reality and imagine doing it, visualize doing it, but it's just not real. And yet the sons of God in Genesis 6 came down and they were real. So they certainly were not non-corporeal entities. They certainly were not computerized avatars. Somehow they were physical. Who and what were they? Well, I remember way back when, in the 1990s, in the good old days when I lived in Chicago. How many of you will remember from those old days? Well, I think they discovered some kind of meteorite that had some kind of like microbes on it or something, which gave the possibility of having life in outer space. Well, in the Jewish newspaper, The Forward, they had a front page story about is life in outer space according to the rabbis. And one of the rabbis they interviewed was our local Rabbi Aaron Soloveitchik, who was not only the Rosh Hashiva of Brisk Yeshiva, but of course took over as dean of Yeshiva University with the passage of his brother, Rabbi Dov Ber, the famous Rabbi Soloveitchik of YU. Now, he was quoted on the front page of The Forward, and I read it there. Yes, there are actual physical flesh and blood humanoid aliens who came down to earth, and those were the sons of God in Genesis 6. And he quoted this from a 9th century text, I think from some Rabbi Yehuda. I've never been able to find that book. So the sons of God were actually physical flesh and blood humanoid angels that came to earth. I couldn't believe the good rabbi said that. Well, at the time I knew the great rabbi. I actually was a teacher in Brisk for a number of years. So I approached the rabbi's son. And I said, did you see what The Forward said in your father's name? I was expecting the son to disavow the newspaper saying, oh, it was misquoted. No, he said, no, It's exactly what my dad said. It's exactly what he believed. So the Ishim angels are always believed to be some type of humanoid. But now, here's the secret. Where did they come from? We do not believe that they come from outer space. We believe they come from the pre-Adamic civilization that grew up here on Earth. And that were the previous end of the epoch, the previous Shemitah, that many of them left the planet and went to the stars. And they are our, in quote, guardian angels. They are the ones who look after us. They are evolved physical human beings. Now, how does that fit with them being non-corporeal? Well, if they were to be advanced technologically, then have the power of mind advanced as well. And those things which we call parapsychological powers, which we don't understand yet, might be the norm of their technology. Maybe they're astral projecting. Maybe they live somewhere out there in Alpha Centauri or wherever they are, and they want to come to Earth. They come at the speed of thought, and they just project themselves here. We see from examples in the Bible, right? Most famous, of course, with the visit of Samson's parents, right? There was this guy, clearly a guy. Everybody could see him. They could eat together and do all this kind of stuff, and all of a sudden, beams up like Scotty, out of Star Trek. Well, in all due respect to my colleague Eric von Daniken, his Chariot of the Gods, no, in my opinion, God's not an alien. No flying saucers, no real beaming up, no USS Enterprise and the like. Lovely fantasy, but not real. But that doesn't mean that these entities cannot come to Earth in astral projection in the same way that we, in our meditations, astral project into their dimensions. When we go up into the Hechalot in our meditations, they don't see a physical us, they see the astral us. Well, maybe we're seeing the astral them. And they can indeed come to Earth physically, as they have. So, Ishim angels, curious, interesting, who knows? Let's move on. We have like 1 or 2 minutes here. If a Jew doesn't keep Shabbat, does he go to hell or is his soul cut off? Jamie, there is no such thing in the Jewish tradition as hell. Is his soul cut off? Well, that is the word used. He does disconnect from his spiritual source. But that does not mean that he does not have the opportunity to reconnect. Just because someone turns away from the light doesn't mean they're in complete and total darkness. Even if you close your eyes, the light still, gets through a wee bit. So no, we don't have any kinds of concepts of eternal damnation or anything of the kind, which is why Jews, in quote, don't need to be saved from anything. So the Christian message of, Jesus saves, you must be saved, has no context in a Judaic setting. For those of you who are interested in understanding this, I have online free course in the Christian Gospel of Matthew, which I taught from an Orthodox Jewish point of view. Go to my KosherTorah.com website, go to the front page down to the free library, and the lessons, all 17 hours of them are there. All we ask is that you show your sign of support and make a donation, please, to help support our organization, because we give you freely. We pray that you'd give back to us. And yeah, it's important, I think, because at this point in time in life, we want to build bridges between communities, not burn them. There are a lot of things between the evangelical Christian and other Christian communities that we do share in common, and it's important that we talk about them. And those things that we disagree with, well, let's be honest. You believe this way, we believe that way. You say Isaiah 53 means this, we say it means that, whatever. Let's focus on what's important as we build bridges, not burn them. One man's opinion. Moving on. What does it mean to fear God? Kirk is asking. You want to know what it means to fear God? Treating other human beings with decency, morality, and respect. Right? Thinking that God's going to send down some kind of a lightning bolt to get you, I think it's a little bit more superstitious and infantile than what mature spiritual beings have to worry about. Fearing God means you want to do what's right, simply because it is what's right. So therefore, in your studies of religion, for example, in our Torah tradition, what is the right or wrong way to observe Halakha, Jewish law? You're going to do what you believe. You're going to follow your convictions because you believe in your heart that this is the right thing. Again, I'll give you an example, very personal to myself. New Rabbanit, from a new country, comes with the laws of the French consistoire to our house here in the United States. She has the ways and traditions that, we're from France. Here, we don't do that kind of stuff now, do we? We do things American style, little Texas and all the rest. Well, something, it's not so black and white. When someone has lived in a certain culture and tradition and has embraced these things and it means something to them deeply and intensely, you don't rip that out of them for some, reason of ideology or anything of the like. You show respect. So you'll find this very common, that if and when you have Ashkenazi and Sephardim who marry one another, rather than one completely give up their identity for the sake of the other, you find a blurring, a merging, a blending, and it leads to shalom. You see it happening in the Jewish world today all over the place. Like I mentioned earlier, Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, Hasidish Ashkenazi. And who are the thousands who throng to his graveside every Rosh Hashanah, which is not a tradition I support, but it's done. Sephardim. Sephardim today have embraced Rabbi Nachman. So he's an honorary Sephardi. So be it. I don't think it's such a bad thing that there's a merging of communities. Yeah, I still have to deal with my own personal prejudices and I'm not purebred Sephardi myself. But, I have my own cultural background, my own cultural beliefs and feelings, and God works in strange ways, and that's just the way it is. And I think it's a lesson for life that we learn to, again, build bridges, and even I have to walk my talk. Let's move on. Timothy's asking, speaking of wearing wedding rings, is there anything connected to wearing it on the left hand? Netzach symbolized the group mind versus individual mind, Hod. Anything to it? Well, the left hand is actually, remember, Gevura, and the right hand is Hesed. Gevura is the boundary and parameters of things. So yeah, I think it's the right place to be. That's where it should be, on the Yad Chazakah, right? To show the strength of commitment. Why not? So yeah, I think it's a good thing. Moving right along, everybody's joining us. Hi to everybody. Rabbi Soloveitchik says in Genesis 6 that they were physical men possessed by demonic angels. Who said they were possessed by demonic angels? They weren't possessed by anybody, right? I never saw Rabbi Soloveitchik say that. Again, if you can quote a source, I would love to see that, because we don't believe that the angels are, in quote, demonic, right? Demonic is not a term that we float around, especially not with angels. That's a Christian concept. Remember, Satan had the war with Michael in heaven, and all the angels fell. That's like Revelation stuff. It is not an original Torah midrash, right? The Shedim are a completely different race that came much later, had nothing to do with the rebellious angels. It's something else. And the rebellious angels are never called demonic. Something very, very different. But what else? Does Judaism teach reincarnation, Rob is asking. Yes, Rob, Judaism does. And there are books available. You can go to our KosherTorah.com website, and you got our search there. You can go up there and type in reincarnation. You'll get my essays, my writings on it. There are other books available. Even the famous Sha'ar HaGilgulim, the Gates of Reincarnation of the Arizal himself. Very technical work, but has been translated and is available in English. You can go on to the website Svarim Center. You can link through our links on our KosherTorah.com website, and it is available there. Possibly even on Amazon. I don't know. Let's see. Robert is asking the question, is it believed that the vein on your left ring finger lead directly to the heart? That would be something related to like acupuncture, acupressure, and all the meridian points. I am certainly not the expert with that, but check it out. It is known that when you wear the tefillin on the left arm, goes down the spirals, it does activate different points of the meridians. There was a great article on that online years ago. I had a link to it somewhere on KosherTorah. It's probably out there somewhere still. I'd check it out if you can find it. Very, very good stuff. Yeah, Rob is saying, I shudder. Thomas Jefferson, yes. I shudder, right, when I pause to think that God is just and his justice cannot sleep forever, especially now with what's happening in the United States, the great conflicts here. Yeah, those words definitely echo true. Let's move on. We're finding out that the rabbis have prejudice against Vuz Jews. Hey, even we rabbis have to do teshuvah. That's just the way it is. Yeah, look, let me be blunt just for a second. Rabbis are not immune from prejudice. You have rabbis, Orthodox Jews, who are prejudiced against non-Jews. Sephardim who are prejudiced against Ashkenazim, Ashkenazim prejudiced against Sephardim. It's all bad no matter what. And each of us individually have to fight that. We can't tolerate this kind of stuff, right? Remember the famous saying, united we stand, or divided we fall. So let's build the concept of standing together. All righty. Hey, we've gone a little over. So what? Who cares? But anyway, I'll post this video, and it'll be on Facebook. I'll get it on YouTube, and we'll send it out to, of course, members of our school, and we'll send out links to everybody. But from time to time, we will, of course, have open forums like this. While I was in Paris, it was very hard, because of the time differences and stuff to do these live videos. I was trying to do once, which 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock there is like 5, 6 o'clock in the morning there, when it was like here, so really didn't work from where I was staying. But all right, we're back here now for the time being. I'm going to be out in Conscious Life Expo in Los Angeles at the end of February. And then I'll be back at our Alien Con conference in Los Angeles again in the end of June. So I'll be back in LA twice. Those of you who are out in the West Coast and like to meet me in our new Rabbanit, please be in touch. What do we got here? Quick question. Speaking of tefillin, when I visit my Chabad rabbi friends, he reverses his to accommodate me because I'm left-handed. Yep, that's the tradition. That is the tradition. All right, what else? What path does an excommunicated Christian follow? The path that takes him closest to God. What path is that? I guess that's something that he or she have to figure out for oneself. All righty, 7 Noahide laws. Oh, there you go. Is Noahide legit? It's universal. What is the problem with not committing idolatry, not committing adultery, not committing murder, not committing stealing and stuff like that? Yeah, I would think that that's pretty much cool for everybody. No, that's what it's supposed to be. Remember, universal moral applications for all these things. God be willing, we should all be so. All righty, guys. Hey, thanks all for being here. God's blessings. For those of you who are Kosher Torah School supporters, thank you, thank you, thank you. Remember, if it wasn't for you guys who support us, I couldn't be here for you. So for those of you who are not members of our school, I'll encourage you, please consider joining our Kosher Torah School. The minimum of a $50 a month donation we ask, and receive all the things I can offer in return. And thank you, knowing that you're helping. Well, what can I say? Make our world a better place. God be willing. Thanks all. We'll be in touch. God bless. Take care. Good night. Shalom.